You're listening to NorthWoods Church Matters, a podcast of NorthWoods Church in Evansville, Indiana, where we discuss why the local church matters and things that matter to the local church. I'm your host, Matt Higgins. Hey, welcome back to the NorthWoods Church Matters podcast, and it seems like a hot minute, but I have our lead pastor, Bobby Pell, in Evansville, sitting down on a microphone, and we're going to talk NorthWoods.
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, Bobby, why are we doing this podcast? I guess we're calling it What's Happening at NorthWoods.
Okay.
Maybe celebration time. Maybe we'll play some Cool in the Gang.
Time.
Come on. That was my wife's favorite song to roller skate to.
That sounds like a good roller skating song.
Yeah, that was her song.
Yeah. So we had an elder retreat 3 or 4 weeks ago, and the elders appropriately communicated really one of the things we don't do well is celebrate. And there are a lot of really good things that are happening at NorthWoods, but we don't talk about them. I think one of the things for leaders is good leaders are always trying to figure out how to fix something. We don't always think about what we're doing well. We're trying to look at what we're not doing well and fix it.
Yeah.
And so this is a moment where we really want to pause and celebrate what God is doing, share with you what God is doing, high five each other out there in the podcast world, and we can make this somewhat of a regular plan. Maybe every 3 or 4 months, we come back to you and we have another celebrating podcast of sorts.
Just a warning for people out there. If you choose to high five somebody, make sure that they know that you're high fiving them first.
Correct.
And then please don't high five them to the face. That would be bad.
Generally always inappropriate.
So how are things going at NorthWoods? I mean, I don't think we've talked about NorthWoods a lot since COVID. So has COVID been kind to us? And how are we doing now?
So Southern Baptists have something called an annual church profile, and it runs from October 1 through the end of September. The annual church profile, from an attendance perspective, we have averaged during those 12 months, our average is right at 400 on Sunday morning. And so our average before COVID was right around 500. So you may say, well, that's not good at all. And I would tell you, it actually is very good. If you sit back and think about the fact that we are running 80% of what we were before COVID, that's good.
Yeah.
The average that's out there is still around 50 to 60%. What we're seeing in churches. I just had a conversation with a pastor a little while ago who they're running 40%. I got off the phone a few moments ago from a pastor in Sellersburg, and he's at 40%. And so many churches are not having people come back into the sanctuary. We're at 80%. Now, let me admit, many of these folks at our 80% of our 400, they're new, and we've gained them. So we probably have 100, 150 people who were with us before COVID, before March of 2020, that we haven't seen come back. When you look at the research, Tom Rainer's research on COVID, many of those folks may not come back. They figured out convenience or whatever reason. But the fact that we're at 400, that's a really good thing.
That's pretty good. And honestly, our best numbers were before the Delta wave.
That's right.
And so we really were climbing up, and then Delta kind of hit our area, and we had some attrition based on that. And we know that there's some people out there that are concerned about the Delta variant, and rightfully so. We've had some losses in our community because of the Delta variant. If you're concerned about Delta, I think a couple of things we can say is, one, rest assured we are continuing to take precautions. We've had some changes to Awana and kids ministry. 2, we're going to continue to live stream as always. And if you feel uncomfortable, then continue to watch online, and this too shall pass.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you say. But let me give a caveat, and that is, please don't treat NorthWoods as if we are less safe than everywhere else that's out there.
Absolutely.
Okay? If you're afraid and you're not going out anywhere, I get it. But if you're going to Walmart and you're going out to eat and you're going everywhere else, but you're not coming to church, that becomes a heart issue. It becomes a spiritual issue. And once again, I really want to commend the congregation. Overall, we're doing well. 400 folks, averaging that on Sunday morning. Thumbs up.
Yeah. One piece of information that I think has gotten out there with COVID that I think is bad is actually this thought that church is one of the most unsafe places that you can go.
Right.
Throughout this entire process of COVID, we have one incident that happened at the church where we knew that there was some transmission of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's it. And in every other case, if we know somebody has been here that has had COVID, we've contacted people. We have shut particular classrooms down and asked people to stay home. And people don't see that behind the scenes, but every once in a while, probably a little more regularly right now, we get a call, somebody has COVID, and then we contact everybody else that they were around.
That's right. Most leadership is done in the dark.
Yeah. People have no idea.
That's right. Let me move to a second number where I think we can really encourage each other, which is, why would our attendance be back at a higher rate than some other places? And I think one of the reasons why it's back at a higher percentage is the amount of people who are in discipling relationships. My last conversation with Darren a week ago, around 260 people in our congregation are in discipling relationships.
It's fantastic.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
If you take out kids from that, guys, we're talking about 70+% of the congregation is in a discipling relationship, which actually means if you're not, you should feel the peer pressure to get in one. Okay. I mean, it is a commonplace that the person you're looking around on Sunday morning is in a discipling relationship with someone. I had a breakfast with someone this morning that was about a discipling relationship. That's the common experience of most of the people in NorthWoods, is they are either being discipled or discipling someone.
From the aspect of student ministry, we're seeing anecdotally, and I'm confident when I make this statement, that the kids that stay in church are the ones that are being discipled in a one-on-one discipleship relationship.
Yep.
It makes a huge difference. So if you're a parent out there and you're wondering, okay, how do I get my kid to stick in church? Consider getting them into a one-on-one discipling relationship. And if you're interested in that, or your kid's interested in that, talk to Rachel Bland and she'll be happy to set your kid up with one. That'd be fantastic. So let's turn and let's talk about Awana. Awana is back. And so how, from your perspective, has Awana been going?
I was here last night and there were a whole bunch of kids.
Yeah. I did not expect the number of kids to show up. I had, shame on me, low expectations just because it's been a hot minute since we've had in-person Awana. We've spent a whole year on the sidelines doing virtual Awana. I didn't know what to expect. And so it really has exceeded my expectations. And we've been running somewhere in the 90s, 100s on Wednesday night in terms of the number of kids that are here. Pre-COVID, we were running 130, 140. And so, I mean, we really are doing well in terms of Awana and kids ministry right now.
I heard there were 92 here last night. Once again, if you sit back and think about that, that's 70% of where we were, we are.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah. And unlike Sunday morning, we weren't meeting at all.
That's right.
We had virtual. So I think that is wonderful. And let me just throw out there, going back to attendance just in general, people need to know that we are a growing church right now.
Mm-hmm.
Our numbers may not be up in terms of butts and seats, but the number of people that have been joining NorthWoods has just been really encouraging.
It has been. Yeah. If you start thinking about how many people are watching online today compared to how many were watching 2 years ago, and you recognize all of these factors, God's at work, and it's pretty cool to see.
Keep inviting people to church. All right, so let's talk about women's ministry. Women's ministry has been growing, and we've been blessed to have Rachel Bland on board this year. It's our first time having a women's ministry director on staff. And so how has she been doing?
Well, because she gave me a list, here we go. 36 women were at a Qdoba night. Who wouldn't go to a Qdoba night? The only reason why I didn't go is because I'm not a woman.
Right. You were there for the second one, right?
That's right. That's true. Actually, I was.
That is true.
There's a picture of me eating. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
36 women at the Qdoba night, plus me. Hopefully they don't count me. 50 women signed up for tonight is the Goebel Farm Fun Night. 50 women signed up for that. 81 women have been signed up for fall Bible studies, and they've had over 100 women involved in women's ministry in some fashion this year. That is awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
That is really great stuff. Heard multiple stories of women sharing their faith. And last week at the Fall Festival, I had one of our seniors went out in the middle of Franklin Street and not very mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And she sat there at one of the tables and someone would bring her food. She would give them orders and they'd go pick it up and bring it to her. And she sat out there for 2 or 3 hours. But during those 2 or 3 hours that she sat there, she had 3 gospel conversations.
Mm.
I think that's a big deal, that We are hearing more and more gospel conversations as well from our congregation. You see that the ping pong ball display is growing. One of the other numbers from the annual church profile is we actually had more baptisms over the last 12 months than we did previously.
Amen.
We had 28 baptisms. God's at work, and it's really encouraging to see.
Yeah, and I think one difference that we have at NorthWoods is the number of adults that we have getting baptized. Could you talk about what's the difference between our baptisms and the baptism rate of other churches and that looks like?
Most churches, they're looking at about 70 to 80% of them are all children.
Yeah.
And I desire to see more kids come to know Christ and be baptized here at NorthWoods. One of the things I'm encouraged by is that it's not just kids.
Yeah.
I'm encouraged by both to see baptisms are happening, and baptisms are happening of all ages.
That's great. Last high five moment here. We had a marriage conference here at NorthWoods for the first time. How did that go and impressions?
Yeah, everything that I heard was really, really encouraging. I will say a lot of those who came, it was just not the common marriage conference. I think a lot of people expected a lot of how-tos and some of those types of things concerning communication or what have you. One of the things I really appreciated about Brent and Janet Alcoin was the fact they pointed you to Christ, that he is to be the center of our lives. He's to be the center of each person individually, and he is to receive the glory from how we live our life. I really appreciated how they approached the teaching.
Yeah, I thought it was great content. We had about 60 people that attended the marriage conference, and I was really encouraged by that.
It's good.
It was good. So let's talk about something that's coming up. In December, we have our annual meeting. And at our annual meeting, we have the election of elders. One topic that people often ask me about is about church governance, because we're different than other churches. Right. So let's start with just the question. So how is NorthWoods governed?
I would say that we are a congregational form of church government, but we are elder-led. We are not elder rule. And so if you grew up in a Baptist church, you grew up in probably a congregational form of church government that was deacon-led, because many of those churches had a group of deacons who made recommendations to the church. And the truth is they were functioning as elders.
Yes.
Our elders do not function as deacons. Our elders function as elders.
What's the difference between a deacon and an elder, biblically?
And we believe that the term elder, pastor, bishop is the same. So every elder here at NorthWoods is to pastor in some way, but they are also to administrate. And the process of administration is to help make decisions. And so if it's a smaller decision, the elders can just make it. If it's a decision that is over a certain amount of money, I believe it's $10,000, it has to go before the congregation, and the congregation voted on that number. So the congregation gives the elders a certain amount of responsibility to lead the congregation, and the elders serve the church by leading. And so a deacon simply is a servant. And so their responsibilities here at NorthWoods is when you see the communion tables, they set up the communion tables. When you see people who are getting baptized, there's a deacon and his wife who are back there in the back, giving them towels and robes and helping them get set up back there in the back, and helping the pastor getting in and out of their stuff as well. And the deacons are the ones who answer the questions in our church about benevolence offerings.
Yes. Yeah.
And which is a great relief from pastors, so that we don't have to determine who receives money for a utility bill.
Yeah, we probably receive 2 to 3 calls a week to the church of people asking for money for things. And they handle all that.
They handle all that. And so deacons lead the church by serving.
And we believe in our church that deacons, you see their role in Acts chapter 6.
That's right.
You see a decision that's made by the original apostles. There's so much need in their growing church community. These apostles, they want to get back to preach and desire to keep sharing the gospel and growing the church. And so they appoint deacons to care for those physical needs of the church, specifically widows and orphans and people that were underprivileged. And in that case, it was some of the Greeks and Gentiles that were from out of town and were stuck in Jerusalem or chose to be there in Jerusalem. And we believe deacons fulfill that same role today.
That's right. The responsibility of our congregation is there's a vote in December that is to affirm or not affirm whether or not our lay elders are doing a good job or not. So let's say there's 60 people who vote, and let's say that a person gets 55 yeses and 5 nos. Well, that's an affirmation, but I think it's important that the congregation knows I tell every elder what their vote is, and every elder is voted on separately. And so one elder may get unanimous affirmation, 60-0. One elder may have 10 no votes. They know it. Now, they don't know why they got the no vote. And many of those elders who receive very many no votes will come, and we will have a conversation about should they or should they not continue to serve. We take this affirmation moment very seriously, and your elders take it very seriously.
Feedback that we've heard from the congregation is that folks don't know their elders well enough to vote on them. And one of the things that we've been doing quite intentionally over the past couple weeks, if you're a fan of the podcast, is we've been doing stories.
That's right.
And that's why we've started off with the stories of all of these elders.
That's right.
So that you can listen and you can get to know them. And they give their testimony and tell their story, and you can get to know our elders a little bit better and determine whether they're qualified to do the job that they do. And let me just add, for me, I think that the vote that we take every year is not so much of an issue of a beauty pageant or whether they're doing a good job, but whether their character matches the qualifications of what it means to be an elder. And
it's
so
definitely not a beauty pageant,
it's
because some
not
of these guys do not fit the beauty pageant thing.
Yeah, sorry, Troy.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So what is congregationalism? You mentioned that. What does that mean in terms of church?
Yeah, so a strict form of congregationalism would be that the congregation determines everything about its government.
Yep. Typical Baptist business meeting.
Yeah, and so some of us have been raised in a form of government that the congregation determines everything, period. And so I can name a local church that voted on the spindles of a banister and which kind of spindle it was going to be, straight or curved, curved to the right or curved to the left. That's a local Southern Baptist church voting on the spindle of a banister. That is a congregational form of government in the strictest sense. That's like our sanctuary is going to get painted. Mm-hmm. And when that came up, I said, so we're voting on, are we going to do it and are we going to spend the money? We did not vote on the paint. That issue was going to be set aside by another group. So this is not a strict congregational form of church government, but it is congregational.
Yeah.
Or else we just would have told the church, this is what's going to happen.
Yes.
Church voted on it because it was over $10,000 for us to put carpet down on the stage and paint the sanctuary. And so if there were any questions, thoughts, or concerns, people could ask questions, people could vote no.
Yeah. And I'm going to make a statement that I think will make people squirm, but I think that you'll agree with, is that biblically, there is no clear mandate for how a church is governed. That there's a mandate that the church should have deacons. There's a mandate that a church should have an elder. I mean, Paul talks about in his letters and also in Acts that everywhere that Paul went, he appointed an elder over those churches. And so there should be an elder or overseer that's administering that church. But in terms of how much power is coalesced in an elder versus the congregation, that's a huge gray area in Scripture. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's not a ton in the Scripture about how much authority the congregation has, and there's not a ton in the Scripture about who makes the call.
Right.
It's not a situation where when I meet with a church planter and I'm talking with them about what form of church government they're going to have, the reason why there's more than one is because I don't believe the Bible shows you only one.
Yes.
I can tell you, I believe there's some wrong forms of church government.
Sure.
An example of that would be, I don't believe that it's right for the pastor or an elder to be a dictator.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I say that is because I don't believe that the heart of a dictator is right biblically. And I bring that up because I believe there's many churches that's exactly what happens.
Right.
Whatever the pastor says, that's what happens. And it almost becomes he's the voice of God. That's not accurate. just happened to be last Sunday. We talked about the priesthood of the believer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things that we respect. It also, though, we have to remember, like if you say, well, I believe in the congregational form of church government, if you go to the Old Testament, children of Israel weren't always right.
In fact, most of the time they were wrong.
Most of the time they were wrong. They sent in 12 spies, 10 came out and said, not about the fruit, but they talked about the giants, and that cost them 40 years.
Yeah.
Joshua and Caleb, the minority report was the actual right report. We have to be careful in how we translate things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good analogy, because there's lots of times in the Old Testament where the Israelites were like, this is what we think. We should have a king. That's a great idea. We want to be like everybody else around you. And sometimes God assents and lets them have their own devices, allows them to have what they want. But sometimes God sends a prophet to say, no, that ain't going to happen that way.
That's exactly right.
What I think is interesting, though, is that there is leadership inherent in the position of pastor. That if you look biblically in every term for pastor, whether it's shepherd, somebody that's leading the flock, or overseer, something that literally means administrator, or elder, which signifies someone with spiritual maturity, and with spiritual maturity comes wisdom from the Lord. I mean, all these are indicating a level of leadership in the church. But that's not to say that we have to be dictators.
Let me just go ahead and put my cards on the table. If I could do it over again, I would make sure that there were elders, plural, from the get-go. First of all, I just believe, like when you mentioned earlier, Paul would go and he would set up elders. He would not set up elder. He would set up elders.
Yes, plural.
Plural. In every place. And when he would do that, I believe that it was intentional that it was plural. First of all, there's an issue of loneliness. Second of all, I believe that there is an issue of that we are better when we are not alone in our thought process, in our decision making, our ability to bounce things off of each other, and our ability to talk about what is God doing. All of those things become, the collective IQ becomes much greater the moment we go from 1 to 2, and it becomes even better when it goes from 2 to 3.
Yeah.
And so I just really believe if you're able to be a part of a church, the moment you're able to go from elder to elders, thumbs up.
Yeah. And I think a good leadership example is David from the Old Testament, that David's a man after God's own heart. David had around him mighty men. He had people that he delegated and trusted to accomplish goals and work, so he wasn't out on the battlefield all the time, and provided him with advice, and were spiritual leaders as well. But, sometimes David needed a Nathan in his life as well. He needed people that came to him and had the boldness to say, what you're doing, it's wrong. The reckoning. And I think as pastors, we need that too. And the more that we understand that, the better our leadership will be. Just like the situation with Moses and going to Jethro and saying, how do I lead all these people? And it was delegation was the answer. We need people to speak into our life too.
Yeah, and that's not always comfortable. It's not always easy. It may be what's best for the congregation, but for us personally, sometimes it's easier for us to just simply say, I have an idea, we ought to do it. When we really need other people to say, you do have an idea, it's not the greatest idea. I think of your life. You were at Calvary Heights Baptist Church in Martinsville, but you to a great degree were a sole elder there, and then you come here, and here you're serving with a team of folks. That was a different transition.
Sure.
There you're alone. Here you're not alone. It's just different.
Yeah. I don't know that I would serve in another church that didn't have this model of governments. To have people that are supporting you, that are equals, that are speaking into your life and also speaking into your ministry, that's invaluable.
Right.
And just kind of wrap this section up, I think why this is helpful is that we have people that come to us sometimes and they're like, you didn't vote on this, or you didn't vote on that. And they're bringing out their past history with church and not necessarily what we do. What we do in terms of government is different. I think it's great. It's great that we don't have to vote on the color of the carpet or the color of the walls or expenditures under a certain amount of money. Just let the church function.
That's right. One thing I will say about the vote coming, Dan King, who has been a former elder, and he took a pause Dan, a few months ago, began sitting in on our elder team again. He, this year, would be a vote, not a vote of affirmation, but a legitimate vote. Is he or is he not going to be an elder? And that vote would happen at the annual meeting. And so Dan has been great for our team to serve with. But that is something that I think the congregation should be prayerfully thinking about as we move towards the annual meeting the first Sunday of December.
And I think one thing that people should pray over and look at in this process is when you vote on our elders, think 1 Timothy 3.
Yeah, that's right.
1 Timothy 3, you'll find the qualifications of what it means to be an elder. Don't vote based on whether you like or don't like a person or whether you
That's right.
don't agree with a decision. The question that we're asking is, do these guys meet the qualifications of 1 Timothy?
Yeah, this is not an issue of personality.
Yeah.
This should be an issue of character.
Sure.
And the character of those qualifications define it.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that you've given yourself an air high five. Woo! Or maybe just a round of applause.
That's right.
Woo! At the same time, go have some ice cream or cobbler or banana bread or
Get
whatever.
a blizzard.
Get a blizzard. Celebrate on us. We're not going to pay for it, but, we'll give you the reason to celebrate.
Imagine we did.
Imagine we do. Imagine us symbolically giving you blizzards. Or maybe you can just straight up ask Bobby for a blizzard next time you see him.
Feel free to ask.
See you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the NorthWoods Church Matters podcast. If you'd like to find out more about NorthWoods Church, you can visit us at our website, www.northwoodschurch.org. Again, that's www.northwoodschurch.org.